The sky above Darcis IV burned like a wound torn open by the gods. Cities that had thrived in peace for decades were now reduced to twisted metal and screaming fires. Below, the citizens ran, stumbled, and fell, trapped in a nightmare that had descended without warning. Elena Varys crouched behind the shattered remains of a market stall, her heart pounding in her chest, like a war drum. The acrid smell of smoke stung her lungs as she pressed her trembling hands against her ears, trying to block out the screams and the deafening roar overhead. Plasma bolts tore through the sky, bursting into fiery blossoms that rained death. "Their fleet, it's huge," she whispered, voice breaking. Her comm crackled with static. "Evacuation routes compromised." "Repeat, no safe exit zones," came the grim voice of Commander Jalen. "Shelter in place. Do not engage." But no one was listening. Around her, chaos reigned. The first wave had been surgical, spacecraft gliding silently before igniting the colony in a blistering storm of flames. The enemy came like fire itself made flesh, relentless, indiscriminate, and merciless. Elena's family had been at the heart of the capital when the inferno started. She hadn't heard from them since. "Varys, status." A new voice cut through the static. This was Captain Wren, leading the militia units scrambling to organize a defense. "We're losing ground fast." Elena swallowed hard and forced herself to move. She scrambled toward the community shelter, one of the few concrete buildings still standing, dodging debris and bodies. Above her, a massive warship cast a shadow like a black sun, discharging a stream of searing plasma that obliterated a nearby building in an instant. "They don't want prisoners," she thought, eyes wide as children screamed beside her. "They want extinction." Her comm beeped urgently, and a fractured transmission slipped through the static. "Humanity must be purged." The voice was distorted, alien, but the message was clear. The Vronkai had declared war on all humans, not just soldiers, but every man, woman, and child. In the shelter, panic festered. Elderly residents wept quietly while young soldiers loaded energy rifles with trembling hands. Elena scanned the crowd, searching for any familiar face. Suddenly, the ground trembled, an unnatural shudder that rippled through the colony's core. The warship above released a pulse of energy, and buildings cracked, glass exploded, and the shelter's walls groaned under the assault. A young girl screamed, clutching a bloodied arm. "We have to move," Captain Wren shouted. "They're bringing in heavier weapons." Elena's comm lit up with an emergency broadcast from the planetary defense grid. "All units, the Cinderfall has begun. Evacuate or be incinerated." Flames licked at the horizon, and the sky seemed to darken as more warships appeared, filling the heavens with death. Elena looked up, tears stinging her eyes. This is only the beginning. The transmission from the colony leader came one last time, fading in and out. "We're surrounded. No hope. They won't stop. Humanity is burning." And with that, Darcis IV was swallowed in fire. The news hit Earth like a meteor strike. Broadcasts across the globe crackled with reports from Darcis IV. Trade colony reduced to ash, billions dead, and an enemy whose intent was clear: total annihilation. In the heart of the Terran High Command, the mood was grim but unyielding. Admiral Aria Kessler stood rigid, eyes fixed on the holo-display that showed flickering red dots, marking Vronkai fleets sweeping across human space. Her jaw clenched with a mix of grief and fury. She had lost her homeworld to the flames. Now she was humanity's shield and sword. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, voice cold but fierce, "we are facing extinction. But we are not yet defeated. The Vronkai believe we are weak, easy prey. They are wrong." Around the room, officers exchanged determined glances. Some faces were pale, others hard as steel. The fleet was battered, scattered, but ready to fight. Earth's fractured nations had been forced to unite or die trying. Outside the command center, the city buzzed with a frantic energy. Factories churned non-stop, transforming everyday machinery into weapons of war, plasma rifles, heavy exosuits, and improvised drones. Civilians lined up in training grounds, learning to fight with whatever they could grasp. On the streets, volunteers gathered, farmers, engineers, doctors, each resolved to defend what remained. The news showed children welding metal plates, grandmothers knitting armor padding, and teenagers learning to pilot rusted starfighters. Humanity was forging itself anew in the crucible of fire. Kessler's own quarters were sparse, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. She studied a worn photograph, her family smiling under blue skies, a world untouched by war. Then she slammed her fist against the table. "No more running," she whispered. "We fight back." Her first act was to launch Project Iron Crucible, a fleet of battered dreadnoughts and stealth frigates, hastily refitted and armed with the latest experimental weapons. Each ship crewed by hardened veterans and raw recruits alike, all bound by a single purpose: to stop the Vron-Kai advance. In the training yards, young recruits sweated under the watchful eyes of veterans. Sergeant Malik barked orders, his voice cutting through the roar of drills. "When they come for us, you don't wait. You strike. You burn. You survive." In the corridors of power, debates rage. Some wanted negotiation. Others demanded total war. But the assault on Darcis IV had steeled resolve. Earth would not kneel. Meanwhile, far from Earth, scattered fleets and colonies sent desperate pleas for aid. Some were lost before reinforcements arrived. Others held with grim determination. Back on Earth, as night fell, the city lights flickered with a newfound urgency. Broadcasts looped images of burning worlds and shattered lives, reminders of what was at stake. Kessler's voice closed the day's final broadcast, resolute. "The Vron-Kai came with fire and death. We will answer with iron and will. Humanity will endure." And somewhere, in the darkness between stars, the Vron-Kai war machine ground on, unaware that the humans they sought to destroy were already forging their own inferno. The vast, silent void of the derelict moon station was a stark contrast to the turmoil gripping human space. Once a bustling outpost for trade and diplomacy, the station now drifted in eerie silence, its hull scarred from years of neglect and recent battle. Admiral Aria Kessler stood in the dim glow of the command deck, her eyes fixed on the approaching ship, a sleek, insectoid vessel shimmering with iridescent armor. The Zalthari had arrived. For decades, humans and Zalthari had been bitter enemies, locked in cold wars that left scars too deep for easy healing. But the Vron-Kai threat had forced even the fiercest rivals to reconsider. The Zalthari emissary, High Commander Shika, stepped aboard with measured grace, antennae twitching as his many eyes surveyed the humans. Kessler studied him carefully. The tension was thick, like a tightly wound spring ready to snap. "Admiral Kessler," Shika's voice was calm, but edged with suspicion. "Your species is bold to summon us after centuries of hostility." "We have no choice," Kessler replied evenly. "The Vron-Kai do not discriminate. If they destroy us, they'll come for you next." The silence that followed was heavy, punctuated only by the distant hum of the station's failing systems. "Your war has pushed you to desperation," Siska said finally. "Very well. We propose a non-aggression pact, and more. An alliance against the Vron-Kai." Kessler nodded. "Agreed, but it won't be easy. Trust must be earned." Behind them, human officers and Zalthari warriors stood side by side, eyes wary. Old wounds ran deep. The station's corridors echoed with the ghosts of past battles, reminders that peace was fragile. Negotiations stretched over hours, fraught with tense exchanges and veiled threats. A saboteur was uncovered in the human ranks, someone feeding secrets to unknown parties. Kessler's sharp gaze found the traitor and crushed the betrayal swiftly. As talks continued, Kessler and Shika found common ground in their shared hatred of the Vron-Kai's brutality. Both species had suffered unimaginable losses. Both knew that survival depended on unity. Outside the station, distant bursts of plasma flared as the Vronkai launched attacks on nearby outposts, a stark reminder of the stakes. When the treaty was finally signed, holograms projected the intertwined sigils of humanity and the Xalthari, symbolizing fragile hope. Kessler addressed the joint forces, voice firm. "We fight not as enemies, but as survivors. The Vronkai want to burn the stars clean. We will be their flame that refuses to die." Siska's antennae twitched in agreement. Our ancestors bled over this hatred. Now it must end. For our worlds to live, we must stand together. As the two commanders shook hands, a storm of tension and hope crackled in the air. The galaxy had never seen such an alliance. But beyond the station's walls, shadows stirred, old rivalries and unseen enemies plotting to shatter the fragile pact before it could ignite into victory. Darkness cloaked the narrow asteroid belt, where human strike teams gathered in silence. The stars above twinkled cold and indifferent, but beneath the surface, the heart of the Vronkai war machine beat, vulnerable, exposed. Admiral Aria Kessler stood beside Captain Wren, watching through reinforced viewport glass as sleek stealth frigates hummed to life. This was no grand fleet battle, it was a shadow war. Operation Infernal Mirror had begun. "Remember," Kessler's voice cut through the low hum, "the Vronkai expect us to fall back or break. They don't understand human stubbornness." Wren's jaw tightened. "Then we'll give them something to fear." Inside the cramped drop pods, squads of Marines checked weapons, plasma carbines, quantum blades, and experimental singularity mines designed to tear through the alien armor like a scythe through wheat. Flamethrowers, once symbols of humanity's primal fire, were relics now replaced by cold, calculated tools of destruction. Lieutenant Maya Chen's breath came steady as her pod detached and hurtled toward the enemy staging ground, a sprawling complex nestled on a barren moon, lit by the eerie glow of alien technology. As they descended, her squad deployed silently, shadows slipping through corridors and vents. The Vronkai, fanatical and brutal, were unprepared for guerrilla strikes within their own fortress. Suddenly, alarms blared. Spotlights snapped on, revealing rows of alien warriors charging. The firefight erupted. Plasma bolts streaked, echoing like thunder in the caverns. Chen's squad unleashed their weapons with deadly precision. A mine detonated, swallowing a squad of Vronkai in a vortex of collapsed space. Screams of rage filled the air, but the humans pressed on, moving like ghosts, vanishing into the labyrinth. Captured Vronkai prisoners spat venomous curses, their eyes wide with disbelief. "You are fire made flesh," one snarled. "Not weak, not prey." The phrase echoed through the minds of the Marines, a grim reminder that this war was unlike any before. Back on the command ship, Kessler monitored the mission, pulse pounding as reports filtered in. The strikes were brutal but effective, disrupting supply lines and sowing chaos. However, the cost was high. Each successful attack was paid for in blood. Fresh recruits burned with fury, but loss tempered their rage. In one tense moment, Chen's squad found themselves trapped. Communications cut. Surrounded, they prepared for a final stand. But in the nick of time, Xalthari reinforcements burst through alien ranks, turning the tide. The alliance proved stronger than the enemy anticipated. After hours of relentless combat, the complex fell silent. Operation Infernal Mirror had shown humanity's capacity for ruthless adaptation. Still, the war was far from over. As Kessler turned away from the tactical display, her voice was steady but fierce. "We've given the Vronkai their first taste of true fire." Outside the viewport, the stars waited, cold witnesses to a war where survival demanded everything. The sky over Earth was no longer the deep blue of childhood memories. Instead, it was a war-torn canvas streaked with fire and smoke as the Vronkai Armada darkened the atmosphere. Their warships blotted out the stars, casting Earth into a grim twilight. In the capital city, families huddled in basements and shelters, clutching one another as distant explosions shook the ground. On the streets, soldiers and civilians alike manned barricades, armed with scavenged plasma rifles and homemade flamethrowers, defending the last foothold of humanity's cradle. Admiral Aria Kessler stood atop a damaged command tower overlooking the chaos below, her eyes sharp and calculating. Reports streamed in. Enemy dropships had breached orbital defenses, and Vronkai ground forces were advancing through the suburbs. "We cannot let them take the heart of Earth," she said, voice resolute. "We fight for every street, every building, every soul." Kessler's bold plan involved turning Earth's own moon debris into kinetic weapons, massive chunks of rock and metal redirected into deadly trajectories to strike the invading fleet. It was a gamble, risky and unprecedented. "Missile control, coordinate lunar debris strike," she ordered. "We have one chance to cripple their flagship fleet." Below, Sergeant Malik rallied his militia, shouting orders amid the roar of firefights. Flames erupted around them as energy bolts tore through buildings, and the air thickened with the acrid scent of burning ozone and metal. "We hold this line," Malik barked. "For every one of us that falls, 2 of them die." Elena Veris, now a hardened fighter after surviving the Cinderfall, fought alongside soldiers. Bloodied and exhausted, she kept moving forward, her mind sharp despite the horror around her. Her thoughts flickered to her lost family, fueling a fire within her that no enemy could snuff. The battle surged into the night. Vronkai berserkers tore through defenses with brutal efficiency, but humanity's resolve was relentless. The streets became a maze of death and defiance. Then, from the moon's orbit, Kessler's command triggered the lunar strike. Massive rocks and debris rocketed through space, slamming into the Vronkai fleet like thunderclaps. Explosions blossomed across the enemy armada, ripping through hulls and sending ships spiraling into space. The flagship, a colossal vessel known as the Emberclaw, shuddered violently, its shields flickering. But the cost was steep. Earth's orbital defenses were weakened, and the Vronkai responded with a brutal counterattack, bombarding cities and military installations. As dawn broke over the scared planet, the battered defenders regrouped. Bloodied but unbroken, they knew the war for Earth was far from over. In a quiet moment, Kessler stood overlooking the battered cityscape. The weight of every lost life pressed on her shoulders, but she refused to falter. "They came for our extinction," she whispered. "They will find only resistance." And across the battered surface of Earth, humanity burned brighter than ever, scared but fiercely alive. Deep within the labyrinthine halls of the Vronkai command citadel, tension simmered beneath the polished obsidian walls. The once unified war council was fracturing, poisoned not by bloodshed, but by whispers. Admiral Aria Kessler sat in the dimly lit command chamber aboard the flagship Ember Spirit, her gaze sharp on the holofeed streaming intercepted Vronkai communications. The humans had launched Ember Protocol, a new front of war waged in the shadows of the mind. Across star systems, human cyber warriors hacked Vronkai data streams, injecting viruses that shredded their sacred faith-based systems. Propaganda broadcasts sown with doubt and fear crept into Vronkai minds like slow poison. Religious leaders, once infallible, now questioned their godlike leaders. The cracks began to spread. Kessler's voice was low but fierce in the command room. "We hit their beliefs where it hurts. They fight as fanatics, but fanatics can doubt." On the Vronkai homeworld, High Priestess Shanal trembled as her holoscreen flickered. Hidden messages embedded in human transmissions gnawed at her certainty. Reports of rebel factions within their ranks began to surface, warriors turning against their leaders, plagued by confusion and fear. Shanal's voice quivered during a council meeting. "The humans corrupt our souls with lies. They use our faith against us." General Threk, her fiercest commander, slammed a clawed fist on the table. "We must crush these traitors before they spread heresy." But the rebellion spread faster than their retaliation. Soldiers once unwavering in devotion faltered. Small enclaves of dissenters ambushed loyalist patrols. The Vronkai's monolithic war machine showed signs of fracturing from within. Back on Earth, Kessler watched with grim satisfaction as the enemy's unity dissolved. Yet she knew the danger. Desperation could make the Vronkai even more unpredictable, more vicious. Meanwhile, among her own ranks, not all embraced the psychological campaign. Captain Wren voiced concerns during a strategy meeting. Playing with their minds risks turning this war into something unrecognizable. What if we lose ourselves in the process? Kessler met Wren's gaze. War is never clean. If we want to survive, we must fight on every battlefield. Physical, mental, spiritual. As night deepened across human space, the Ember Protocol pushed further. Propaganda broadcasts spread false visions of betrayal among the Vronkai leadership. Trusted generals grew suspicious of each other. The Vronkai began hunting shadows within their own ranks. And beneath the surface of a crumbling empire, seeds of doubt took root, heralding a war far darker than any battlefield. The void around the Vronkai homeworld churned with the fury of a storm. The combined fleets of humanity and Zalthari surged forward, a tidal wave of iron and fire destined to bring the war to the enemy's doorstep. Admiral Kessler stood on the bridge of the Ember Spirit, her eyes burning with fierce determination. This was it, the final strike, the last chance to end the inferno that had consumed so many worlds. "Prepare all units," she commanded. "Today, we do not merely fight for survival. We fight for vengeance." In the depths of the battle, Captain Wren led a squadron of battered fighters through a gauntlet of enemy fire. Explosions blossomed around them like deadly flowers. His voice crackled over the comm, steady despite the chaos. "Keep tight formation. We break their shield arrays. And then we burn." Below, on the war-torn surface of the planet, ground forces fought a brutal campaign of attrition. Helena Varys moved with a relentless fury, leading guerrilla strikes against fortified enemy positions. Every fallen comrade stoked the fire in her heart. "Hold the line," she shouted. "This is our home. We end this here." The skies above thundered with the roar of plasma and missiles as the fleets clashed. The Vronkai unleashed their deadliest weapons, bioengineered monstrosities, psychic blasts, and searing energy storms meant to turn the battle to ash. But the Alliance held firm. Zalthari warriors fought alongside human marines, their differences set aside by the shared crucible of war. Inside the enemy capital, High Priestess Shanal watched the destruction unfold with a shattered resolve. Her empire crumbled not just under fire, but from within. Rebellion, fear, and doubt had weakened even her iron grip. "Sacrifice everything," she whispered to her generals. "Let their flames consume us all rather than see us fall divided." As the battle reached its crescendo, Kessler ordered the final phase, the Inferno Strike. A massive bomb, forged from the remnants of the lunar debris and charged with experimental energy, would be detonated in the heart of the enemy's core. The bombship surged forward, escorted by fighters and shuttles bristling with weapons. Captain Wren's squadron formed a protective barrier, fending off relentless waves of attackers. "Almost there," Wren reported, voice tight with urgency. "This ends now." With a thunderous roar, the bomb detonated, unleashing a cataclysmic wave of energy that tore through the planet's crust and shattered the Vronkai's capital. The shockwave rippled outward, flattening armies and war machines alike. In the aftermath, silence reigned. Human and Zalthari forces regrouped amid the ruins, battered but victorious. Helena Varys collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her soot-streaked face. They had won, but at a cost no one could measure. Admiral Kessler's voice broke over the comms, steady but heavy. "The flames have consumed them, but so have they scared us. We are survivors. We are humanity." Across the shattered starscape, the war was finally over. The silence after the storm was deafening. The great fires that had consumed the Vronkai homeworld slowly faded, leaving behind a scared and broken planet, a testament to a war fought with fire and iron. Humanity and its newfound allies, the Extinction, now faced the daunting task of rebuilding not just their shattered worlds, but a fragile peace born in the crucible of destruction. Admiral Aria Kessler stood on the bridge of the Ember Spirit, staring out at the distant horizon where the battered stars still burned. Her body ached with exhaustion, but her spirit remained unyielding. The cost of victory had been unimaginable. Billions lost, countless worlds reduced to ash. But humanity endured. Back on Earth, cities flickered back to life. Survivors emerged from shelters and rubble, eyes wide with cautious hope. Children played among the ruins, their laughter a fragile balm against the ghosts of war. Kessler's voice echoed over the global broadcasts. We stood at the edge of extinction and faced the flames. We emerged not as ashes, but as a fire that refuses to die. In the heart of the rebuilt Terran High Command, leaders from once warring factions gathered to forge a new coalition, a united front to ensure that such devastation would never come again. The Black Sky Pact with the Extinction became a foundation, binding species once enemies into brothers in arms. Lieutenant Maya Chen, now decorated for valor, walked through the restored training grounds, teaching new recruits the lessons learned in the darkest days. We fight not out of hatred, she told them, but for the hope of a future free from fear. Yet, beneath the optimism, scars remained. Elena Varys, haunted by the faces of lost comrades, stared at the stars and whispered a vow. We will never forget, and we will never allow this fire to rise again. On a distant world, remnants of the Vron Kai plotted quietly, their empire fractured but not yet broken. Shadows lurked in the corners of peace, waiting for a chance to reignite the flames of war. But for now, humanity held the line, stronger, wiser, and united. Kessler turned away from the viewport, her gaze steady. The assault started with flames, she murmured. It concluded with their extinction. But from these ashes, we will build a new dawn. As the first light of a new era touched the horizon, the stars themselves seemed to pulse with renewed life. Humanity's story was far from over.